Episode 7. We're already there. The world's going to hell, but we're still going with Laserdiscs. Episode 7. Box number 7. K, L, and M. We're going to be doing that very shortly. But before we do that, it's Black T-shirt, so that means it's Hardware Day. And I've had a little chat with a guy named Roger Tressler. Now, Roger used to work at Dolby Laboratories when they were introducing AC3 onto Laserdisc. He had some pretty interesting information to share, so I'm going to cut to that now, and then after that we'll go into the next box. Thanks for joining me, Roger. Did you ever collect Laserdiscs yourself?
I have several I collected along the way, but not a huge number. Before AC3 we were renting Laserdiscs frequently as they were superior to the VHS available at the time.
Do you ever go back and watch them?
Occasionally I do so. Mainly to compare the audio-video quality with a DVD or a Blu-ray of the same title. I still have the Amadeus box set, and really wish the studio would release a fully restored version of the theatrical cut. The current director's cut is a travesty.
Would you be surprised to know that there's a group of over 10,000 people that still do?
$10,000 people? I had no idea.
Do you feel consumers understood AC3 and how to use it properly?
There was already a base of home theatre enthusiasts using ProLogic for some 5 years prior to Dolby Digital's release on Laserdisc, so it was not hard to explain how to adapt.
How do you think Laserdisc audio holds up today?
Extremely well. The 5.1 format is still the dominant surround format after a quarter century, and is likely to remain so. Dolby Digital at 384 kilobytes per second is also still in wide use on broadcast and streaming services, same as Laserdisc.
Was it hard to get a buy-in from all the studios?
If you mean film studios, Universal was a problem because Spielberg was an investor in DTS at that time. Sony, Columbia, had their own film sound format. A big issue was not just the effort and cost of making 5.1 soundtracks, but in having enough theatres able to play them. It was a contentious time.
Is there anything you would have done differently?
AC3 was delayed getting onto the 35mm film format because of internal preference for Dolby SR. That allowed competing formats to move forward unanswered for a while. On the Laserdisc format, I would have preferred having the AC3 demodulators built inside every Laserdisc player, rather than the RF output method. Then the audio bitstream output would have been the same SPDIF standard used for other formats like TV and cable, and also for the existing digital audio for Laserdiscs.
How did the industry settle on the AC3 standard?
AC3 was initially developed for use on 35mm film, and was released in 1992. That's the same year the Grand Alliance was formed to merge multiple proposals for digital TV in the US. AC3 was part of that proposal, and was formally decided in 1995. Pioneer saw that AC3 would become a consumer standard, and so went about adding it to Laserdiscs, releasing the first discs in 1995.
How did studios really feel about Laserdisc as a format?
Studios are frankly ambivalent about delivery formats. They will support anything that makes them money, which nowadays also means security against pirating.
Disc from the last episode is Kinjati. That was the one with Bronson beating up a dude with a giant dildo, which was quite funny. It's a canon movie. Hey, it's Bronson. You know, it's Bronson. Let's move on to the first disc for this episode, which is starting off with K. Okay, so first up we have Kiss of Death. This is just the Japanese release. I believe it's widescreen still. I can't remember if it was or not. I'm starting to clear out a lot of my pan and scan from doing these videos, and those little white boxes of text that just came up then, after doing the editing and noticing how many discs I've got that are pan and scan, it absolutely butchers a film when you put a pan and scan film on, you know. I just spent 10 years collecting Laserdiscs without really thinking about, oh, yeah, that's cutting out the movie. But now it's been brought to my attention, I just can't block it out anymore. And I see things that I didn't see before, and now I can't keep these discs anymore. So there are some movies that you're just not going to find a widescreen version of, and you're lucky just to get a pan and scan as it is. Big movies that need to be widescreen, like Great Escape, just are butchered when you look at them in pan and scan now. Still getting there. Anyway, let's move on. This one I've talked about in a previous episode. This is Whoopi Goldberg as a pool shark and can beat anybody in playing pool. So she has a manager and she goes to places and not necessarily hustles them, but says, look, I'm the best pool player. If anyone can beat me, here's some big money for you, you know. It's a good little movie. She does it to save her kid, and so it has this really sweet little gesture to it. And like I said in the previous episodes, my partner Sophie is a big Whoopi Goldberg fan. So, alright, this is Kiss the Girls. This was a really, really good movie. I found Morgan Freeman during the 90s did a lot of the same kind of movies. And this and Hard Rain, and there's a lot of these movies like Deep Impact and stuff like that. They're not that memorable these days, but they're still great movies. This is one of them. This is definitely one of them. I like Kiss the Girls. Alright, next up we have, La Femme Nikita. Now, I've only had to watch this in French so far. I've never watched the translated version in English, but I'll get around to it one day. It doesn't really need it. It was awesome. Luc Besson is just the most terrific director, and even in this early film of his, he puts on a great performance, and I love his use of camera work and his ability to find beautiful frames. He's really good at picking good shots. Okay, well, we have a bit of Arnie action now, the last action hero. And this was one of those discs that loads up from the inside. Funny enough, you take the discs and reach them out from in there. Cool movie. I didn't mind this. I remember when I saw it at the cinema, he had a mini disc player in his car when the kid flies into the movie screen. There's a mini disc player. And I'm like, what is that technology? Oh my god, I want that. And I did get a mini disc player, but it took me about 5 years after the movie came out because they were expensive. Alright, LA Story. This is the Japanese version. I have got a US widescreen version coming. I kept this just because LA Story is up there with my top 10 favourite movies of all time. And when you've got your favourite movie, you want multiple copies of it. It's not just one movie you want on one version. It's like Electric Dreams for me. I want it on Laserdisc, I want it on VHS, I want it on Blu-ray if I can. Some movies you just can't get enough copies of. Okay, next up we have Bruce Willis and Damon Wayans in The Last Boy Scout. I believe this was a Tony Scott film. Yep, Tony Scott, produced by Joel Silver. I don't think yes it is, widescreen and it's digital sound, but that's about it. Nothing special, but fun movie. And I had it on VHS that was recorded off TV with the ads paused out, and it was so censored. It was good to finally see the full version of the film. Okay, next up we have a DTS disc. I love those DTS discs, and this one sounds good. I don't think many people really give it the credit it deserves, because DTS sounds best when it comes to loud booming boom 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 noises and stuff like that, and this movie delivers. When it comes to soundtrack wise, I really like this movie. Even though the plot's nothing special and it takes a little bit to get going, it's a fun, just silly film. You're not going to be able to write an essay about it, but you'll still enjoy it. Okay. Oh, this was good when it came out. I'm not as much of a fan anymore of The Lawnmower Man, but I still like it. This is the unrated director's cut. I'm not sure if this is widescreen or not, actually. It doesn't say on the disc, so I'm guessing it's not. What do we got next? Oh, another Steve Martin film. This one is widescreen. Leap of Faith. Digital sound. Deborah Winger absolutely stole the show from Steve Martin, which is a big call, but not to mention this wasn't really one of his best films. Steve Martin has some great stories, but this one definitely wasn't Steve Martin at his very best. No. Next up we have Le Mans, and talk about a beautiful film. When I say beautiful, I mean beautifully shot. The direction, the photography, the lighting, the way they filmed the cars, everything technically is gorgeous. It's a very boring storyline. It doesn't really grab you unless you really just want to sit there and watch racing for 2 hours, which is fine by me. I love racing, but it's no Grand Prix. Grand Prix tells a story while it's showing you racing. This one doesn't really feel like it delivers in that same way. Yeah, I still highly recommend this disc if you get your hands on it. This is a Japanese pressing, but I believe it's the widescreen version. And it's definitely got digital sound. I'm looking at it there. Yeah, nice. I like my Steve McQueen movies. Alright, so we have a few Lethal Weapon runs now. So, we'll do it in order. First of all, we've got Lethal Weapon 1. I don't know if this is the best version of the movie. I think this is just standard, let's have a look at the code on the side. Yeah, this looks like standard pan and scan, I'm afraid. I actually would say this is my least watch Lethal Weapon movie. I know it's the most famous and it's like Die Hard. It's the one that kicked it all off and the most legendary, but I just didn't find it as fun as these two. Number 2 and number 3 Lethal Weapon was when they finally got their characters down and had a little more fun with it. Number 1 was just a little bit too serious for me. It was a bit too dark, where this one has some great scenes in it. This is number 2, isn't it? Yeah, number 2. Joe Pesci gets added to the story. They just make it a bit more like a comedy.
Okay. They fuck you at the drive-thru, okay? They fuck you at the drive-thru.
Next up is Lethal Weapon 3, where they
fuck you in the hospital. First they drug you, then they fuck you.
It's another one of the funnest movies that came out of the 90s, if you ask me. I really think Richard Donner delivered, as he does. Yeah, it was just a lot of fun. It was when Mel Gibson was just bringing out really fun movies at the time, like Braveheart. Danny Glover was a bit more serious because he just came out of Predator 2. I really liked number 3. Number 4 was when things went a bit too...
They fuck you with cell phones. That's what it is. They're fucking you with the cell phone.
To be honest, I'm over Rene Russo. Rene Russo was in just about every freaking late 90s movie she managed to sneak her ass into. I just got sick of her. And this one becomes a lot more Rene Russo. Even Mel Gibson steps back to let her do the fighting when it comes to beating off guys and beating... Oh, hang on. I worded that wrong. The reason I've got this one, the reason I really like the number 4 is it does have a behind the scenes, and it shows the making of, or segments of the making of, through 1 to 4. Not just the making of number 4. That's cool. I really dig that. You could see them connect over the years and change and grow and, you know, get old for this shit. Continuing on, we have Lolita. This is a Stanley Kubrick film. And I got it because I'm collecting a whole bunch of Peter Sellers movies. I'm a bit of a Peter Sellers geek. This was not what I expected at all when I thought of a Peter Sellers film, of course. But having said that, this is an awesome movie. James Mason is incredible in this film. It really gets pushed towards the second half of the film, you know, the storyline when she goes away. And I won't ruin it for you. I'll let you watch it. Okay, next up we have Leviathan, which is a bit like The Abyss in the sense of it's an underwater sea monster / alien thing. Great cast. Not a bad little film. It just has a lot lower budget than The Abyss did. Richard Crenna and Peter Weller, Ernie Hudson, Daniel Stern. Alright, next up we have... Oh, I love this one. Judge Roy Bean. The Life and Times of Judge Roy Bean. This is widescreen with digital sound. And Paul Newman. And he portrays a judge who's moving into the outskirts of the Old West, where the real outlaws live. Brings order to his town, but is very strict. his posse get away with a little bit too much, and it's just... Okay, we got rudely interrupted then, but now we're back in it, and we got the last few discs to go, and then we're finished box 7. Okay, next up we have another Canon film. This one's one of the high budget ones they did actually, called Life Force. Directed by Tobe Hooper, who made Texas Chainsaw Massacre films. And yeah, he also did another Canon Group film, which was a Texas Chainsaw Massacre film as well, didn't he? Anyway, yeah, so it's okay. A naked chick who's an alien. It's very Species, isn't it, when you think about it? Naked chick, alien, killing men. It's widescreen, digital sound, so yeah. Alright, next up we have Lightning Jack. This is just pan and scan and digital sound. And it's Cuba Gooding Jr., Beverly D'Angelo, and Paul Hogan. He wants to be more wanted, you know, in the sense of become a more wanted outlaw. He doesn't feel like his dollar amount is high enough. Next up, I think, is also pan and scan digital sound, but I'm just glad to have it. I'm a big fan of Little Shop of Horrors, from Frank Oz being the director to the complete cast, from John Candy, James Belushi, Steve Martin, Rick Moranis. Great little film. Have you ever seen the alternate ending? All going good, and so we're up to our next one, which is Lockup. I've talked about this in the pickups video already, so I won't go into it too much. Just sadly it's pan and scan, but that's what are you going to do? John Flynn. Oh, this is a ripper, this one. The special edition of Logans Run. Really nice pressing. Good pictures, and yeah, I really like this version of it. Widescreen collector's edition, so it has some special features like a Dolby Digital soundtrack, audio commentary, and a featurette that was showing off MGM when they were going through their big changes back in 1975. Yeah. Really rapt to find this disc. Logan's Run's a tricky disc to get just as it is, so to find the fancy version of this, I was really rapt about that. Next up we have, I've been getting a whole bunch of Neil Simon films. I really like his comedies. And this is The Lonely Guy, not one of his best. I'm not a big fan of this one. Compared to The Jerk, which came out just before this, I much prefer that. But it's not that bad. Charles Groland's pretty good in it. Some funny moments in this, but yeah, not nearly as good as The Jerk was. I think that was just pan and scan and analog sound because it was an original 80s release, this disc. Yeah, I don't think there was a repressing, was there? Next up, we have The Long Kiss Goodnight. This is AC3 and widescreen. Samuel Jackson, Gina Davis. This is the last big Gina Davis film before she kind of disappeared after... what was that movie that killed her career? Oh, that's right, Cutthroat Island, yeah. Yeah, this is directed by Rennie Harlan. I believe she married him. Next up, we have... look who's talking. I grew up a lot with this film. I watched it a lot. Digital sound, pan and scan. When I watched it on videotape when I was a kid growing up, me and my sister liked it. I think that's why I kept it. Because it was, you know, babies talking. It was a novelty. Even though there was a lot of bits in it that were just too adulty, you know. Really, it wasn't... Number 2 is much better for kids if you're ever going to show them that. Scott Beluga from Star Trek Enterprise was fantastic in this. This is Lord of the Illusion. This is Clive Barker. And to be honest, I like this better than Hellraiser. I know. Sorry. It's creepy as fuck, you know? Yeah. Cool little one, that one, actually. Yeah. Nice cover, too. If I had a nicer version, I think that would look really good, you know? I like that kind of reflecting. Yeah, so next up is Losing It. This is just pan and scan, I think, and analog sound too. I kept it because it's kind of funny. This was a big year, 1983, for Tom Cruise. This is when he brought out Risky Business and this at the same time. Alright, next up we have The Lost Boys. This is a weird version of this I've never seen this before. I think this might be something from Hong Kong or Singapore or something like that, because when I look at my friends' copies, they don't have that label. I kept it because this is the widescreen version of the film and digital audio, so, you know, it's kind of cool. Yeah. Joel Schumacher. Lost in Space. This is the US edition, and the remake, didn't they? They instead of the it's better than the TV show that's out at the moment. I really hated that. Even that's not saying much, because Lost in Space, the concept is great and it should be really popular and it should be really good, but it's not being executed correctly. Speaking of which, yep. Moving on. Oh, this isn't bad. Major Payne. Damon Wayans, I think, yeah. And bunch of kooky kids. My partner really likes this. My kids actually like this too. It's a good film. Has some really lovely moments in it, that one. Next up, we have Kevin Smith's second film, Mallrats. Not bad. You know, if you're a big fan of Kevin Smith, it's good to have all of his films on Laserdisc. I think Kevin Smith really suits Laserdisc.
Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned for Sega.
Widescreen and digital sound, which is great in my book. I'm not going to hit him too hard on that because that was only his second film, but it's no Chasing Amy. He got a lot better after Chasing Amy. Maltese Falcon with Bogart. This is probably the worst version you can get of this movie, but I was just glad to finally see it. Alright, next up we have another Bill Murray film. I'm a big Bill Murray fan, so I want to get all of them, even if they are... This isn't one of his best movies. It's alright, but it's just not as good as what I was expecting. From a career that started with Ghostbusters and Stripes, and then just to drop down into films like Larger Than Life, Man Who Knew Too Little, The Man Who Loved Women. This is directed by... it's got Julie Andrews in it, so it must be Blake Edwards. That's right, Blake Edwards' film. Again, I'm going for all the Burt Reynolds movies, as many as I can. And this is just pan and scan with analog sound, but when it comes to Burt Reynolds, a lot of the time you don't really have a choice. I'm okay with that. That's a good movie. Next up we have The Man with the Golden Arm. This is hardcore film, man. Frank Sinatra. It's about a bass player who's trying to kick the habit of heroin, and it's literally just locking... It's like The Lighthouse. You know that movie The Lighthouse just came out? Well, he just gets locked in a room and it's him suffering for the next 48 hours of getting off the heroin, and, you know, it's full-on film, especially for something that came out back then. Kim Novak, I love, you know, too. She was fantastic in everything she's done. So, yeah, way before its time, if you ask me, in that way. A bit more Frank, following on with The Manchurian Candidate. I haven't seen the new one with Denzel Washington yet. I'm curious about checking that out, actually, because I really love this. This was a very memorable movie. What a cast, too. Janet Leigh. I don't know who Lawrence Harvey is. I should look that up. But Angela Lansbury, James Gregory. I mean, directed by John Frankenheimer. This just... The very first ever kung fu fight on an American film. And also, Frank Sinatra was doing it too. So, you know, dude. Alright, next up. Another funny one is The Man with Two Brains. I didn't mind this one. This cops a lot of flack, but I think this is one of Steve Martin's funnier ones he's done. Constant jokes all the way through, and all types of jokes, from really dumb stuff to some really clever jokes in there as well.
Do something very important, all right?
Okay.
I want you to run home, and I want you to call the ER of North Bank General Hospital, 932-1000. Tell them to set up OR6 immediately and contact anesthesiologist Isadora Turek, 472-2112, beep 12. Have them send an ambulance with a paramedic crew, light IV, D5 and W, KVO. You got it?
ER North Bank General Hospital, 932-1000, set OR6 contact anesthesiologist Isadora Turek, 472-2112, beep 12. Ambulance with paramedics and light IV, D5 and WKVO.
That's good.
Sounds like a subdural hematoma to me.
Oh, it does it? Well, it's not your job to diagnose.
But I thought...
You thought, just go!
But it's Carl Reiner, who, you know, from working with Mel Brooks. I recommend following Carl Reiner on Twitter. Maniac Cop 2, and this pretty much is self-explanatory, isn't it? Robert Darby. It was a nice horror, and it was cheap, and for Mars Attacks, this is star-studded cast and a really dull film, believe it or not. I wasn't a fan of this at all, but I have to keep it because it's Tim Burton. You know, it's Tim Burton. Maybe I just didn't get it. I'll have to watch it again another day. But it's good. All the stars in it and stuff like that. That was kind of cool. Back then, it was really a novelty to have that many superstars in one film. You know, nowadays you have cameos all the time. So next up we have The Mask of Zorro, Antonio Banderas, widescreen, AC3. This is a DADC pressing, so I don't know if it's perfect or not, but as far as I remember it being fine. The girls love this movie. I put this on for women and they just go gaga. I don't know if it's Antonio Banderas. I probably bet it's Antonio Banderas, but I think it's the energy in the film. You know, women just love that stuff. Anyway, next up we have, this is the AC3 Special Edition version with one of my special covers on there. AC3 widescreen. And has some special features like a commentary and behind the scenes, trailers, hundreds of rare production stills, and a CAV presentation so you can watch it frame by frame. I've also got the DTS version of it because this is really cheap. This is one of the most common DTS discs you can find. And yeah, sounds good. Good enough anyway. I mean, it's not the kind of movie you go, oh, I've got to get it in DTS. It's good to have a choice. Alright, next up we have widescreen and digital sound Matinee. This is Joe Dante, right after doing, I think, maybe Gremlins 2, and before doing Small Soldiers. I like the little Mant film, you know, in here. It's kind of cute. Yeah, Joe Dante was a real big fan of old school horror films, so if you're into that genre, I think you'll find a lot of parodies that you'll get more than I did, you know. Alright, next up is one of the most common discs you can probably find is Maverick with Jodie Foster, James Gardner from Grand Prix, and Mel Gibson. Directed by Richard Donner, who made the Lethal Weapon movies, of course. And it's okay. It's a nice, fun comedy, adventure, fun. That you can easily chuck on in the background that you don't need to pay 100% attention to. Alright, this I've already done in the pickup video, I'm sure, is the Max Headroom one. This is the pilot episode of the Max Headroom, the second one that came out in '86. Oh, the music's done by Bizzaro, who's from Ultravox, I think, yeah. I wanted this movie for ages. I saw the review of this before I actually saw the movie, done by, I think it was Nostalgia Critic. It was someone on that channel anyway. Maximum Overdrive, and which is a Stephen King film directed by Stephen King, and it's very over the top, so to speak. Explosions are bigger, the dialogue's more looser. It really is a little bit more crazier than the average Stephen King movies you see, and yeah, I kind of dig it, you know, written and directed by Stephen King. Alright. Next up we have $1 Million Mystery, which is sort of like a Mad World, or what was the other one they did? Rat Race. Well, this was the least of the three, but I like the whole zany travelling across the country kind of thing. It keeps it all moving along. Next up is Mimic, very common Laserdisc. Directed by Guillermo del Toro, who is very popular these days making films, especially the Hellboy series, as everyone knows him for. Okay, next up we have another Stephen King film, but this is directed by Rob Reiner, the guy who made The Princess Bride, would you believe? This is Misery, with, of course, James Caan is the reason why I got this, but you can't deny it. What's her name in this? Come on, you're already yelling it out at me right now, I can hear you. Kathy Bates was just incredible in this film and stole the show. There's that famous scene where she gets the director of photography was Barry Sonnenfeld. Isn't that funny? It's the guy who made Men in Black. Okay, moving on, we have Ivan Reitman, Meatballs with Bill Murray. This was, I think, the first Ivan Reitman movie. I liked them when I first got them, back when I was in my early 30s, but now I guess I've kind of grown out of them. But anyway, so this is pan and scan and analog sound, so it's nothing to write home about, but it's pretty good nick, you know, considering how old it is. And then there's Meatballs Part 2. Is this the one with the alien? Yeah, I think it was. Meatballs Part 2 is when they have a little alien and everything gets censored up a lot more than the first one was. Paul Rubin is in this one, whereas the first one is Bill Murray. So you can see by the names that they took a big dive down after that. This one I got because it's Dennis Hopper, but also there's some very funny jokes in this. But Paul Walker is one of the main stars. It's Meet the Deedles. It's worth sitting through once if you like comedies, if you like those stupid 90s comedies. Widescreen AC3 too, which is always good. Next up is Men in Black, which is AC3 and widescreen, and I always use this disc as my go-to disc to show off what AC3 can do. Side 3, I think it was chapter 37 or 38, there's this great scene where he presses the red button on the car, and the car changes shape and stretches out and then goes up onto the roof, and he starts driving along the roof. And the sound is incredibly well done in that scene. Oh, the whole movie, but that scene in particular is my go-to. Hey, check this out. You want to see how good surround sound sounds? You know, and I put that on, and you can really hear the motor and the engine and everything behind, as well as Elvis playing out the front, and Jay's sitting next to you, and you can hear him moving up and down around as he's trying to get back into his seat. And the sound engineering is fantastic. So yeah, that's my go-to. That's my go-to disc when I want to show off my AC3. Okay, next up is Meet Wally Sparks, and I'll be honest with you, it's been so long I don't really remember this one. Directed by Peter Baldwin. This is Rodney Dangerfield, of course, and I don't remember it, but I liked it because I kept it. Yep, widescreen and digital sound, which is good. Next up, we have some John Carpenter. Oh yeah. Now, this is not really a John Carpenter film in its truest sense, is it? When the movie came out, I remember the storyline not really blowing me away, but the special effects being mind-blowing at the time. And, you know, you got to give John Carpenter credit for really putting himself out there and trying his best to make the best out of what he had. To be honest, Chevy Chase was on his way out by then. John Carpenter was sort of putting his best work behind him by that point too, by 92. Yeah, nonetheless, it's okay. Like I said, there's some really good moments in it. Oh, wow. This is a good movie. Midnight Express. Very slow to get started. But by the second half of this film, you are sitting there on the edge of your seat. It is so good. Directed by Alan Parker, who's quite a well-known director nowadays. I personally like him because he made the Wall movie. Okay, next up we have Midway. This is directed by Jack Schmidt and has music by John Williams, which is good. James Coburn. Oh, love James Coburn. Forgot about this one, yeah. Letterbox, digital sound. Yeah, basically it's about the Battle of Midway. It actually includes real war footage too in the film, which was an interesting direction to take. Woody Allen in Mighty Aphrodite. And this is actually a really funny film. I found Woody Allen films for me is kind of a hit and miss. I don't get into everything he does. Really, really cool movie, though. I really, really like Mighty Aphrodite. Good cast. Fun movie. Just a fun script. And Peter Weller was in it, too, which was funny, because I watched this right after watching Leviathan. Anyway, yeah, so that's this box done. And we'll move on to next week, which is pickups. And I've got lots of pickups, because it's been a long time since I've done a video. And you'll see me wearing a white shirt. When you see me wearing a white Laserdisc shirt, it's pickup videos, and black Laserdisc shirt is, well, what we did today. Just like the information about hardware and stuff like that. Next hardware episode we're doing, I think we're going to go into looking at an XO and seeing if we can get one of those up and running. It'll be a miracle, but miracles have been known to happen. In the meantime, please subscribe, as always, if you haven't already. And feel free to drop me a comment. I love reading them. It's really nice getting on my phone every now and then, seeing a comment drop on, and a bit of Laserdisc discussion. I love talking about Laserdisc to anybody, you know, so bring it on. Until then, have a great one, and I'll see you next episode.
But it's a big world.
and we all have to do our part.
Let's say you're in a situation. You're being accosted. Tell us how you deal with it.
Well, first thing...
Oh, easy with that chair. I take it easy with that. You don't want to... Yeah. No.